And welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. Shares facilitated and oil prices dropped back down as Tehran gives an encouraging response during talks with US officials in Geneva on Iran's nuclear program, after days of escalating tension from President Donald Trump. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said a new window of opportunity has opened. Negotiators from Ukraine and Russia concluded the first day of the US-mediated peace talks in Geneva, with the US President Donald Trump pressing Kyiv to act fast to reach a deal to end the four-year conflict. A frantic search is underway for 10 backcountry skiers missing in an avalanche in the mountains of California, where a huge storm dumped heavy snow. Officials say a group of 16 people, 4 guides and 12 clients were caught up in the avalanche. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said ties between India and France are very special after talks with President Emmanuel Macron during his 3-day visit for the AI summit. Armed group Hezbollah rejected the Lebanese government's decision to grant the army at least 4 months to advance the second phase of a nationwide disarmament plan, saying it would not accept what it sees as a move serving Israel. Millions of files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein suggest the existence of a global criminal enterprise that carried out acts meeting the legal threshold of crimes against humanity, according to a panel of independent experts appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. DNA from a glove found near Nancy Guthrie's Arizona home failed to score a match in a national database of genetic profiles. The outcome, announced by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, marked a major setback for investigators as the search for the 84-year-old mother stretched into its 17th day. California Attorney General Rob Bonta is building an artificial intelligence accountability program as his office probes Elon Musk's XAI over the generation of non-consensual sexual explicit images. Bonta moved quickly last month to send a cease and desist letter to XAI as regulators globally investigated the company. And Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte has announced her intention run for president of the Archipelago nation in 2028. Duterte, who is embroiled in a bitter feud with President Ferdinand Marcos, was impeached last year, only to see the country's Supreme Court throw the case out over procedural issues. I offer my life, my strength and my future in the service of our nation, she said in announcing her candidacy. US Vice President J.D. Vance said some progress was made in the second round of nuclear talks with Tehran in Geneva. However, he made it clear that US President Donald Trump has set firm red lines, and according to Vance, Iran is not yet ready to acknowledge or work through them. One of those red lines is that Iran must never obtain a nuclear weapon. Vance warned that a nuclear Iran could trigger a global arms race and pose a direct threat to the United States. Meanwhile, Iran's president earlier stated that Tehran would never abandon its peaceful nuclear program. Following talks with the United States, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that the two countries has reached an understanding of the main guiding principles, but work still needed to be done. Meanwhile, a US official stated that Iran said it would offer detailed nuclear proposals in the next 2 weeks to close gaps in the nuclear talks. We are now going to Matthew Vadam, who is an American journalist and author, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World.
Good to be here.
What does J.D. Vance's suggestion of diplomacy or another option signal about US political divisions over how to approach Iran's nuclear program?
I don't know what it signals, but I can translate what it means. It was a threat. He's saying, you have to agree to our demands or we're going to attack you. So I don't think it's a particularly nuanced thing, but in the diplomatic world, these are the kinds of things that they say. Iran is not agreeing to abandon its nuclear program, and the United States insists that it abandon its nuclear program because the Trump administration doesn't trust Iran and believes that Iran wants to build nuclear weapons to use against its enemies, such as the United States and Israel and some Islamic nations that it doesn't get along with. So they're not agreeing, and it's really not a big surprise that they haven't had any kind of a breakthrough, because I'm very cynical. I think these talks are doomed to fail.
And how fragile is this process, given the political pressure on both sides?
Well, people are very sensitive. The diplomats are very sensitive to what is going on and to signals that the other side is sending, and probably the slightest little thing could set off a disagreement and cause one or the other side to walk away from the bargaining table. So yeah, I'd say these are high stakes talks, and as such, they are quite fragile. One side could withdraw from the talks anytime it feels like it. But I get the feeling Iran won't do that, because right now Iran is being threatened by a massive, unprecedented U.S. armada off in its waters, and they're afraid of what the United States might do to them if they fail to reach a deal. Now, this doesn't mean they're going to reach a deal, but the pressure is on Iran, and I think Iran takes this very seriously.
And can reaching an agreement on high-level principles meaningfully narrow the open gaps between US and Iranian positions?
Well, the high-level principles are that Iran will not build nuclear weapons. That's the key principle here. Another thing that the United States wants is for Iran to stop killing its citizens who protest against the totalitarian government in Tehran's repressive measures, and against the regime in general. So these are things that are very important to the United States, and I think Iran knows that. But whether it's going to back down and agree to the Trump administration's demands is far from clear, because the Iranian government is very determined. I would even say fanatical, and I have a feeling they're not going to agree to a deal.
And like you said, if this diplomacy stalls, what other options might be realistically considered, and what risks would they carry for regional stability?
Well, there could be more sanctions, but I don't know what else the U.S. could sanction, since Iran is already heavily sanctioned. They could more aggressively embargo Iranian goods, Iranian oil, but I'm not sure, these things are already subject to restrictions enforced by the United States. So I'm not sure if ramping these things up would have more of an impact. I think that really the only thing that is going to bring Iran to the bargaining table is the use of force, because that seems to be the only thing that the mullahs understand.
Thank you, Matthew. Don't go too far, as we will be joining back with you very shortly. Ukraine's lead negotiator, Rustem Umerov, and Russian representatives left a Geneva hotel after the first day of trilateral talks with the United States concluded. The two-day meeting comes as Washington steps up its diplomatic push to end Europe's largest conflict since World War II. US President Donald Trump has called on both Moscow and Kyiv to reach a deal, saying the war must end. But Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says Kyiv is facing the greatest pressure to make concessions, raising concerns at home about the terms of any potential agreement. Umerov said Tuesday's discussions focused on practical issues and the mechanics for possible decisions, rather than final outcomes. The Geneva talks follow 2 rounds of US-brokered meetings in Abu Dhabi that ended without a major breakthrough. Meanwhile, in his nightly video address, President Zelensky said Russia launched overnight airstrikes across large parts of the country, just hours before negotiators from Kyiv and Moscow met for US-mediated talks in Switzerland. The attacks severely damaged the power network in the southern port city of Odessa, leaving tens of thousands of residents without heat and water, according to Ukrainian officials. Let's listen in.
Навіть день старту чергових форматів у Женеві, тристоронніх, двосторонніх з Америкою, Росія зустрічає ударом. Це дуже чітко демонструє, чого Росія хоче і на що вони налаштовані. Було ще майже 400 дронів, загроза ударів не зникає, холодна погода сама по собі приваблює Росію, і вони і далі будуть намагатись поставити зиму на основу. Буде ще сьогодні доповідь делегації після першого раунду перемовин в Женеві. Хлопці точно мають поставити питання щодо цих ударів, питання передусім американській стороні, яка і нам, і Росії пропонувала утриматись від ударів. Україна готова. Нам війна не потрібна. І ми діємо завжди дзеркально. Ми захищаємо свою державу, свою незалежність. Так само ми готові швидко рухатись до достойної угоди про завершення війни. Питання лише до росіян, чого вони хочуть. І також, чи будуть наслідки для Росії за те, що шахеди, ракети та фентезійні балачки на історичну тематику для них мають більше значення, ніж реальна дипломатія. Дипломатія. Усіх цих російських ракетах та дронах, які були застосовані сьогодні, тисячі компонентів, які Росія сама не виробляє. 5 «Іскандерів М» – це щонайменше 75 критичних компонентів неросійського виробництва. 3 ракети Х-101 – це майже 160 компонентів, які Росія не може сама замінити. Кожен шахет – це сотні таких компонентів, які завозяться в Росію з інших країн, і не тільки від китайських компаній, до речі. Ще Європа, Америка, Японія – це не тільки для нас в Україні, але й загалом. Для глобальної безпеки важливо, щоб партнери реально блокували ланцюжки постачання в Росію критичних компонентів для виробництва зброї. І також, щоб самі компанії краще слідкували, куди потрапляють їхні компоненти. Росія без таких зв'язків зі світом нічого не може. Вони не здатні бути сильними в повній ізоляції. Саме тому блокування і тиск справді можуть спонукати агресора до зміни політики. Але це залежить від рішучості світу. Я дякую всім, хто діє сильно, щоб агресор втрачав можливості затягувати цю війну.
We are now being joined again by Matthew Vadem. Thank you so much for joining us back here on NewsX World. What does the fact that talks again concluded without a clear breakthrough say about the current prospects for a diplomatic resolution?
Well, the current prospects for a diplomatic resolution of the Russia-Ukraine war, I don't think there's any reason for optimism right now, though it's good that the two sides are still talking, but they seem, very far apart. And the key issue, as it has been for a long time, is territory. Ukraine wants the territory that Russia seized by force back. which is, something like 20% of Ukraine, and 19 or 20%, and Russia doesn't want to give it back. Unless they can reach some sort of an accommodation, and Ukraine embraces a land for peace deal, I don't think that the war is going to end anytime soon.
And as we know, that during these peace talks, there are still there is still attacks going on. How significant is it that the Russian military operations continued, even as the negotiators are in Geneva?
Well, I think it's that the fact that they didn't call them off while diplomats negotiate is an indication that they're nowhere near peace, that they're nowhere near resolving the matter. They want to keep fighting. I should say, though, that reportedly Ukraine over the last week or so has regained about 78 square miles. Not a lot, but it's something, of the territory that Russia seized from it. But the war remains more or less a stalemate, and the two sides, neither side seems to be gaining much of an advantage over the other at the time. The fact that they are continuing, to fight while talks are ongoing, is not unusual in a war, but it's also not a good sign for the prospect of peace.
And what could we expect coming out of today's talks? Now, we know it was only planned for a 2-day talk. What do you think? Are we going to come out with any sort of plan, do you think? Or is it just still going to be the same with no clear timeline?
I think it's going to be the same with no clear timeline. I think that something that shakes things up has to take place before either side is going to be shaken out of their current positions and want to make serious efforts to secure the peace. So I think it's unfortunately just going to drag on for the time being, unless and until something dramatic happens to change the equation. If the United States were to follow through on its threats and attack Iran, that might, who knows, might put some pressure on Russia. But we don't know if that's going to happen. Russia is, aligned with Iran, and they might start to be fearful that it would have repercussions for them. So it would have to be something like that, an international event, or something significant that happens in Russia or Ukraine, for them to shake them away from their current bargaining positions.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet has said that Thai forces are occupying Cambodian territory after fighting last year despite a peace accord brokered by US President Donald Trump, and called on Thailand to allow a joint boundary commission to begin working on their disputed border. Hun Manet has said that his government was working to address cyber scam centres that have proliferated in the country. Thailand has said it is maintaining troop positions as part of de-escalation measures and has denied it is occupying territory. The comments from Cambodia's leader on the border conflict underscore the risk that the conflict could reignite once again, despite Trump continuing to promote the success of the peace deal. An October peace accord signed with Trump and Malaysia's Prime Minister broke down within a matter of weeks before a new ceasefire was reached on December the 27th. Let's in fact listen in to what the Cambodian Prime Minister had to say.
Unfortunately, so far it's still fragile. We still have Thai forces occupied deep into Cambodian territory in many areas. This is further beyond even Thailand's own unilateral claim line, border line. Also, certain activities that been conducted by Thai troops, such as the laying of containers, barbed wire to block the road, has caused hardship to our people. We have about 80,000 people displaced, cannot go home now because of the blockage. So this is not an accusation, but it's a statement of the facts.
We are now being joined by retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kuchar, who's an international relations expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us here today on NewsX World. How credible is the Cambodian's Prime Minister claim that Thailand is occupying territory, and what evidence or international law supports each side's position?
A very good morning to you, and a very interesting question, because this ceasefire was always fragile. Because you have to understand that unless you discuss the basic problems between the two countries, you cannot come to a lasting solution. Because there is no neutral body also, like coming to your question that the statements and the counter statements being made by the leaders of Cambodia and Thailand at the same time. Since there is no neutral body there, like the UN, a limitation of force or a delimitation of force in that area to see that border management is done in a proper manner, will not be able to clearly say that who's right and who's wrong right now. And basically, it's a historical border dispute. It's not an interstate kind of a dispute. It has got links to a history, and especially sites like the Priya Vihar temple. And the border is quite a long one. 817 kilometers is the border, and it is very poorly demarcated. So you see, unless you have a proper international boundary between the two countries, nobody will know which part of the border are you occupying, because they will say that this is our land and we have not entered into yours. Because whenever you have a poorly demarcated border, a similar kind of a situation we are seeing in Ladakh also with China, because China comes and occupies and claims that it is his territory, and we tell them, no, it's not yours, it's a disputed territory. The same problem I'm seeing in Cambodia and Thailand, because these are disputed territories, and nobody can claim that it's there or you otherwise. Coming to the involvement of the United States now, because this is important, because United States had Malaysia had brokered a deal in 2025, late 2025, and especially at the ASEAN summit, if you remember, Kuala Lumpur, on October 2025, and it was also known as the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord. And the basic reason was to reduce the hostilities and open the technical talks, because these border limitation issues, a lot of map evidence has to be seen, historical evidence has to be seen, and only then you can come to a conclusion that which territory belongs to which country. So I think that this fragility in this ceasefire has also been orchestrated by Thailand's recent elections also, which has nationalistic voices have started actually coming out of Thailand. And Cambodia's leadership also likes to play to its domestic audience. So I think if I can summarize this discussion, in the present context, I feel that it has got more of political overtones rather than actual things happening on ground. And because unless you have clear maps available to you, unless the two sides sit together, this ceasefire will remain fragile.
Thank you so much, retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kuchar, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Peru's ousted President Jose Jerry has bidded farewell to his cabinet at the gates of the government palace after the Congress voted to remove him from office over a scandal involving undisclosed meetings with the Chinese businessman. According to reports, Jerry was filmed at the gates of the palace, surrounded by his ministers and greeting supporters who turned to express their support. Meanwhile, 75 lawmakers have voted in favour of removing Jerry, while 24 voted against and 3 abstained. However, legislators are expected to elect a new president of Congress, who will also assume presidency. A supporter of Jerry has responded. Let's listen in to what the supporter had to say.
Mi opinión es que no estoy contento de lo que están haciéndole al presidente sacándole del cargo. Hubiera culminado. ¿Y cómo queda el pueblo peruano? ¿Cómo queda? Toda la estabilidad política me está quedando. Mira, nosotros, otro presidente va a entrar cuando faltaba poco ya para que se vaya, se hubiese completado, pero lamentablemente hay enemigos contra él.
YouTube says it has now fixed a technical glitch that briefly disrupted access to the video platform for users around the world. The company said the problem stemmed from an issue with its recommendation system, which prevented videos from appearing across different YouTube surfaces. That included YouTube.com, the main app, as well as YouTube Music, Kids and TV. Outage trafficking website Down Detected reported more than 320,000 user complaints in the United States at the peak of the disruption. Users in India, Britain, Australia and Mexico also reported problems. YouTube says the issue has now been resolved and all services are back to normal. Today is day 3 of the AI Impact Summit 2026 in India's national capital, New Delhi. The event, touted as the first ever edition in the Global South, is expected to bring together heads of state, senior ministers, global technology executives, researchers, startup founders. More than 700 sessions are planned across the summit's duration, spanning themes such as AI safety, governance, ethics, data protection, sovereign AI capabilities, and the future of work. Today, the India AI Impact Summit is primarily dedicated to bridging the gap between academic research and industrial application. While the formal grand inauguration by Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled for Thursday, today features several high-impact technical and industry-focused sessions. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.